Hey there folks, it's the end of 2023, 2024 is just a few weeks away, and I thought I'd take an opportunity to look at the state of the kayak fishing industry today. Now, the COVID pandemic had a really profound impact on the industry in that it created a huge new user base, and it also created challenges in manufacturing as well. But we saw a lot more new kayak anglers enter the hobby, the sport, and we saw a lot of manufacturers struggling to keep up with demands. But it was a great opportunity and a time of growth for some companies, whereas other companies struggled. But for me, 2023 really feels like the year that things have really started to shift more back to normal. There's not the supply and chain issues that we've been having for the prior years. There's a glut of used kayaks on the market, and you can see this. So I've seen kayaks sitting on the used market now that would have gone quickly out the door in the prior few years, and people are being forced to reduce the cost of their used kayaks because the demand simply isn't there. There's a lot of folks that picked up the sport and now are dropping it. As things move back more towards normal. And likewise, this has created a lot of challenges in terms of demand for kayak manufacturers. Now, a lot of the kayak fishing shops are really heavy on inventory going into the winter when they're typically not. They're doing huge discounts to try and sell them. Even Hobie was having like pretty deep discount sales, which I've never seen in the entire time I've been kayak fishing for 10 plus years. So things are definitely changing, and I thought I'd talk just a little bit about some of my perspectives and also talk about what we saw in 2023 in terms of innovation and stagnation and potentially some weakening of some major kayak brands. I think first and foremost, even though I'm not on Old Town's pro staff anymore, I still think they are really leading the industry with their release of their new ePDL, which is like an e-bike. It's an electronically assisted pedal drive kayak. They've tied that into their existing Big Water lineup, so they have a Big Water ePDL now, which is formerly known as the Predator. And it's a very innovative design. It's been a long time coming. I'm surprised it took this long for somebody to do it, but it just seems like Old Town is really moving the industry forward on that motorized front with the release of their MK106 and then the Autopilot. And before that, they had the Predator motorized MX, and now they have this Big Water ePDL. So I really do think that they're on that cusp of innovation. And leading the industry in the motorized kayaks for sure. The challenge is that the cost of that ePDL is almost $6,000. I'm honestly not sure how well that's going to be received in today's marketplace where things are pretty tight for a lot of Americans due to inflation, and a $6,000 motorized kayaks is a pretty big pill to swallow. I'm sure they'll sell a number of them, but I'm just not sure there's going to be a huge demand. I would love to hear your thoughts on a $6,000 ePDL kayak. Let me know in the comments section below. Which leads me into talking about another brand that has really caught my eye this year, and that is Bonafide kayaks. They are mostly a Southeast focused brand, and their new releases really still cater to the Eastern United States, Southeast United States more than the West where I live. But they have a kayak designer there who is really bringing some amazing innovative designs into hull design and into kayak features and accessories. His name's Hans Nutz, and he's really doing some amazing things. They have released 3 brand new models just this year alone, which is pretty amazing. And what I see this brand doing is they're really starting to specialize into like niche for very specific types of kayak fisheries. So they came out with like a skiff, which is like a hybrid sup kayak, paddle kayak. It looks pretty cool. It'll do really well, I'm sure, with those flats folks out there in the Southeast, especially in Florida. They also came out with a kayak specifically designed for river fishing. That's the River RVR. That thing's got some really incredible built-in anchoring systems for anchoring off the bow, including like a roller bar molded into the kayak, which is super cool. They even have one for the stern that's designed to do drag chains, so it'll like slow you down as you're moving downriver, so you can work water. And they've got places to tie in your anchoring system, so you can crank it up and crank it down. He actually took his design from like Northwest drift boats, where they sweep up on both ends. That gives you a lot of push when you're moving through current, or you have current come down from behind you. It's going to keep that kayak up high and dry. It's got a lot of secondary stability, but you can still turn, you can roll a little bit, you can bite into the current and flip around if you need to quickly, so it's got that maneuverability. Anyways, it's really innovative. And then what I thought was cool about their third kayak they released, they, instead of competing with companies like Old Town who are making their own motorized kayaks, because Old Town can do that because Johnson Outdoors owns Minn Kota, so they can integrate those technologies quickly together, and they have that engineering knowledge right in-house because they've been building motors for a long time. So it doesn't really make sense for a company like Bonafide, which primarily produces paddle kayaks. They have, I think, 1 or 2 pedal powered kayaks, but they're primarily a paddle focused kayak. So they came out with a kayak, the PWR, their power kayak. It is a paddle kayak designed to be motorized, and so they've incorporated no drill plates on the stern and on the bow that will make it easy for you to mount a bow mount motor, or you can put a motor on the stern. They've also made it so you can incorporate a foot controlled rudder system. Yeah, I mean, it's just really smart. Like, for me, now when I go out and I see kayak fishermen and I follow, even in the Northwest, I see motors on lots of kayaks now. Like, everybody's motorizing their kayaks. There's just a huge advantage in that it gives you more range. And with so many motor companies producing motors specifically for kayaks, and they're designing these kits that make it super easy to attach them to kayaks. You've got like Newport Motors, they've expanded their lineup. Torqeedo's updated theirs. Bixby keeps updating theirs. And Motor Guide has, as far as I'm aware, the only motor with built-in GPS that has a shortened 36-inch shaft, which is designed to be bow mounted on any kayak. This makes a lot of sense. It gives anglers the opportunity to make aftermarket purchases and find the motor that's right for them, that meets their needs at the right cost point. And what Bonafide did with the PWR kayaks, they're just like, well, let's just make a kayak that can accept all of those different motor designs very easy, very quickly, without people having to punch a bunch of big holes in their kayaks. The thing's rigged and ready to go with removable drill out ports that can be replaced. Super easy for you to wire your entire kayak without actually having to drill holes in the hull itself. So this is so smart. I'm really excited about what Bonafide is doing. I wish like Bonafide wasn't a southeastern brand and they had somebody here on the West Coast who could actually create a kayak that meets our needs here in the West. Because the truth is, and one of the things that's really happened this year, is that the West Coast kayak brands are pretty much all gone. Ocean Kayak was acquired by Johnson Outdoors several years ago, and they've been slowly digesting that brand to the point that it doesn't exist, and they've pretty much eliminated it altogether. Now there's very few Ocean Kayak models left in their lineup. They've even started adding the Old Town name in there. It's just slowly eating that brand alive, and all of the kayaks that were really specifically designed for our West Coast fisheries are gone. Things like the Prowler and Trident series are long history. You know, we've had a local brand pop up, Swell Watercraft. You know, they're really making a kayak that's more resemblant of something like we saw in the early 90s, a really long, skinny, fast, but very wet ride. And I just don't think they're going to find huge demand here. I'm sure there'll be a few anglers that'll be keyed in on it, But for me, their kayaks lack a lot of the basic amenities I expect on modern fishing kayaks, even ones that are designed after historic models. Yeah, we're pretty much done here. Eddyline Kayak has now completely abandoned the West Coast. They're moving their headquarters out of Bothell, Washington, and going to Arkansas, although they already moved manufacturing to Mexico. So that leads us into sort of the last West Coast brand, which is Hobie. And they are also considering moving all of their kayak manufacturing to Mexico in the near future. But for me, this year they didn't really release much. I feel like Hobie is like the Apple of the kayak fishing industry now. They just keep releasing like with small iterative changes, or their new releases. Like this year they released a new version of their 360 drive. All they're doing is fixing their engineering mistakes they made before, and you can't really sell that as like this huge innovative upgrade. You're just fixing your mistakes, but you're charging more for fixing your mistakes. It doesn't really make sense to me. Yeah, the brand feels like it's really stagnated. During the pandemic, they really struggled in quality control, and there was a lot of problems with hole cracking, and those problems still exist today, and the 360 drives have a lot of maintenance issues. So I do feel like that brand has really stagnated. I don't see them innovating in any way, and I don't see the quality in what they're producing improving in any kind of shape or form, especially if they go offshore. And even like their social media rollouts and these things, it looks really amateur. Like, I don't know who they're paying to do it, but they need to get somebody better. So I mean, they still make a good quality kayak, but I do feel like with the brand looking at geographically moving south and quality moving south, I don't understand why they can maintain their prices. I don't think their prices are going to go south. But it's the only West Coast brand left. I feel like, there's a lot of opportunity there for them to improve on a lot of their older kayaks they haven't revisited in a long time. They haven't really done anything to improve the Revo brand, which has a really strong following in the Northwest. The Outback's still a formidable kayak, and pro anglers remain really popular. But I also see pro anglers getting dumped on the used market at the highest rate I've ever seen, and they're not moving, and people are having to sell them at really reduced costs. And for me, one of the strengths that Hobie always had is that their resale value was always really good, and I don't see that anymore. There's other brands, other options out there, brands with better customer service, better durability, more reliable pedal drives, albeit not the 180 Mirage drive, which is a really strongly well-developed, reliable drive. But there's just, to me, I just feel like the brand's lost its way, and they're still a giant. They can fall a long way and be fine, but for me, I sense the brand is falling. Likewise, like Native Kayak is pretty much the same. I feel like they just keep releasing iteratively small incremental changes, making improvements that anglers wanted to see in their kayaks. They have a really strong following, but I don't see them innovating in any significant form either. Some other things that happened in the industry, which concerned me directly more, was Aquaglide, which is based out of Bend, Oregon, was acquired by Bote. They make Boda boards in Florida. They're really well. Both of them are well-known manufacturers of inflatable kayaks. To be fair, even after Aquaglide was acquired, I did have one of my Aquaglides explode on me when we were catfishing in Spain with it. They do make a really lightweight inflatable that I took with me to Spain. We landed 250-pound catfish in that kayak with no problem, but at the end of the second day of fishing, it just exploded, thankfully, right after we got off the water. So I was able to email them, send them photos, and within 1 hour they had a new one on the way. So even under new ownership, they still appear to be have really good customer service. So that's a good thing. Aquaglide does make some really nice and affordable inflatable kayaks. I also have their Blackfoot 130, which I've been using on lakes. Every time I'm out in it, It's a good kayak, but I always miss having my pedal drive. But I have been using it to float, coastal and tributary rivers, catching salmon with my wife. You're just using it as a point A to point B, very durable PVC kayak, and it's been great for that. It's really comfortable, especially with those nice chairs. And the final bit I want to touch on is just this. There's been this huge push of Chinese-made pedal drive kayaks coming into the United States. There's basically like 8 or 9 different companies bringing in basically the exact same kayak. Some of them have prop drive, some have pedal, some are just paddle. But, they're all basically the same models. You got like the Van Hunks, there's the Hoodoo, there's Brooklyn Kayak Company. The list goes on and on. They're all the same boat that you can go on Alibaba Express and buy. They're just getting them in their own colorways and putting a brand label on them. They are tempting because of their price points, especially to folks who are cash limited, but who want to get into a pedal kayak. Some of those brands seem to have good customer service. Others, it seems to be a bit questionable. But I think this is just what's going to happen, right? Like, this is the natural progression of things, especially with Hobie losing its patent on its first version of their fin drive. That's basically what all these companies are using in their pedal drive kayaks, although some do have some prop drive systems. But we're just seeing this glut of these kayaks moving in to the market. So that's definitely something that I've seen a lot of this year, and I expect that to increase. Hopefully, I would like to see some of those companies, hire some engineers, really come up with their own designs. And that is where the one kayak that does stand out is Lightning Kayaks. This is, they brought in Robert Field. He has a really popular YouTube kayak fishing channel. But they have, they're molding their own kayaks in the United States, in Wisconsin, I believe. And, but they're using first generation Hobie fin drives, but they are at a really competitive price point. The whole designs look unique, and they look like they're better designed for a kayak angler in mind. They've obviously, with having Robert as an advisor, he's made sure that the designs are a little bit, better in terms of outrigging the kayak on top. So anyways, it's been a really interesting time to be in kayak fishing for me as a West Coast kayak angler, and really interior West. And I also feel like a lot of my needs as a kayak angler are really similar to those as Great Lakes anglers. I still feel like we're like the black sheep. The southeastern bass fisheries are just swamping this entire market, not only because demand is higher there and the weather's better there year-round to go kayak fishing, but those anglers, especially those participating in bass tournaments and things like that, for them, they seem to be willing to pay a premium, whereas, guys out here who just want to troll around and catch some trout tend to be a little bit more picky about spending a ton of money on a kayak, because they're not doing it for the money. So anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections on the kayak fishing industry in 2023. Do you resonate with what I had to say, or do you disagree with how I think about companies like Old Town or Hobie or Native? I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments section below, and I'll see you next time. Just remember, fish smarter, not harder.